Look, if Sawyer had beaten Ash outright, instead of just because Ash looked at his bare hands during the battle, I might have enjoyed this episode a lot more.
Pokemon! 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 Pokemon!
Hello everyone, I'm Dustin, Benzel, and welcome to another Pokemon XY&Z anime discussion. Today, in this particular video, we are going to discuss the review of Ash and Sawyer's battle. So let's talk about the Ash versus Sawyer. Also, this video is going to be a little bit late, or it's late because I needed to take a small break from Pokemon with everything that happened in the forums in regards to this episode, as well as I haven't been feeling very good in the past few days or whatever, so that's why this video is a little late. So I'm just going to say this real quick. I very much disliked how this episode turned out. Of course, for some reason, we live in a world that just because you dislike something, you're wrong. And that's why I had to take a little break from Pokemon in general. I mean, I would still go to the forums and look around for new information, but I just stopped thinking about it so I could actually analyze the episode on my own time and figure things out. But the point is, I don't like how just because you dislike something, suddenly everyone is attacking you as a person. It's like you're not allowed to have your own opinion, basically, and it's like, can't you just accept my opinion and move on? But you know, whatever. It's just what it is. So so I went ahead and analyzed the battle and figured things out. So here I want to go ahead and talk about the highlights of the episode. I have like up to 12 highlights here of everything that happened, and then I'm going to discuss why I had a problem with this episode. So anyway, let's start off with number 1. Ash defeats a Scizor. Yep, he runs into Scissors because why not? He runs into Scizor and then Ash defeats a Scizor with his Pokemon. And I know why I said scissor, because I spelled scissor wrong. So yeah, Ash defeats a Scizor, then runs into Sawyer. Wow, this is a bad start already. Sawyer tells Ash about winning all the 8 badges in the Pokemon Center, I believe, and Ash still has yet to get his final badge. Sawyer, during the time that you last battled the Ash to this particular episode, you really got 3 badges, including Wolfrix, and Ash has yet to get a badge. Really? But, you know, whatever. Bonnie tells Sawyer about Greninja without its water veil and a giant water shuriken. I don't know if Bonnie quite mentioned giant water shuriken, but I think it was mentioned, but it's been a while. It's been like a day or whatever since I analyzed the battle, so I'm pretty sure Bonnie mentioned it. So of course, then there's that battle with a normal 3 versus 3. It was Sawyer's suggestion. Before, the battles have been a series of 1v1s, but 3 or whatever, or, you know, in the 3 versus 3 format, but just a bunch of single 1 versus 1. I'm not really sure how the anime... I don't know how the anime asks for this. I don't know if... it's like a thing of 3-on-3 or 3 versus 3, or I'm not really sure how they word it in regards to the battle, because Sawyer specifically said he wanted the usual 3 versus 3 format where you send out your Pokemon, you battle the Pokemon until it gets knocked out, then you send out your next Pokemon, but the other trainer doesn't substitute, and it just keeps going until both Pokemon trainers have all of their Pokemon knocked out. So yeah, it is a little strange or whatever, but I'm very curious about how they specifically word it. I'd have to look at the previous episodes and this one dubbed to see how they do it in the dub, because it is interesting how The others were technically 3 versus 3, but they were like a series of 1v1s, So I'm very curious, or whatever. So anyway, moving on. Then of course, we get some Team Flare stuff. Officer Jenny saves a skip balloon. Zero Six there, Lysander, and that's pretty much for Team Flare. Just to let you know that that they're still there, and I really like this. A lot of people are wondering why Team Flare are just randomly showing up in these episodes or whatever. But I think this is really nice because we've had a problem where we had the villainous team like Team Magma or Team Aqua. They would shove these random semi-unrelated episodes in there, and then all of a sudden we would get this climax for the team ending or whatever. And I really didn't like that, but I like how they're handling Team Flare. Team Flare was introduced late, but I'm sure they were like waiting until either Sun and Moon were confirmed or Zygarde wasn't going to have its own game so that they could apply the third game or whatever. Like, no third games this generation. Oh, okay, so we'll just move on or whatever. So I think that's what happened. They were waiting. Then, of course, that's when we got Team Flare was X, Y, and Z. I think 6 months prior to that, they learned that, of course, Sun and Moon was going to be a thing. So then they, of course, wrote the episodes in so that we would get X, Y, and Z with Team Flare. So what I'm saying is I like how they're giving all this focus to the team, this evil team, so that we can have a satisfying climax. So when the climax is like 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, we'll be like, yeah, they really built it up to this particular point that we should have a good, satisfying conclusion. Whether or not that actually is the case, we'll just have to wait and see. But I do like how they're focusing Team Flare, even if it's like meaningless, because at least they're doing something relevant to the plot. They're like slowly working it in. It isn't like last episode they were building a giant death ray machine that's the size of the planet. 10 episodes later, oh, the giant death machine that's the size of a planet is now complete. Huh, how did that happen? In this particular instance, it's like they're taking steps to show how the death machine is being built or whatever, basically. That's what I'm saying here. So anyway, moving on, of course we get Bonnie singing, which is kind of annoying since we already get the ending. If you're going to have Bonnie singing, you could at least make a new ending, even though there's not that many episodes, but it seems perfect enough for a new ending, and at the very least, maybe we can get an actual new opening. That would be interesting. Well, not necessarily a new opening using the X, Y, and Z theme, but a completely different animation. So like the League, maybe we'll get like some cool battles along or something like that instead of like Wolfric or whatever. Maybe we won't see Sawyer battling against Ash or whatever. Maybe we can get some team spoilers, maybe. I don't know, just something updated, something fresh, something whatever. So anyway, let's begin with the battle. So the first battle was, of course, Noivern and Doublade. And, of course, Noivern shows off that it has Dragon Claw, and with the Dragon Claw acrobatics combo, Doublade is knocked out. And I like this battle because it made a lot of sense because Doublade took a lot of hits. It took like 6, 7, 8 acrobatics because if you watch the episode, there's like these still shots of like hitting acrobatics with Doublade, and each time Sawyer had Doublade using iron defense or whatever. But I'm going to assume that the multiple times that it hit, you made that hitting noise wasn't just to show off a different perspective of the same hit. I'm going to assume that every time was its own separate thing. So definitely like 6 or 7 acrobatics in total, including the finishing one and some Dragon Claw. So that was really nice. Noivern versus Klotzer. Klotzer wins, and I did like the battle. It did make sense after all. A Mega Launcher, Dragon Pulse would probably knock out most Noivern. Plus, with Noivern having took a lot of damage probably from that Fury Cutter, I believe. Yeah, it pretty much made sense. So then, of course, we had Halucha versus Klotzer, and Klotzer wins. I didn't really like this battle all that much and didn't make it that much sense, but it's like whatever, because, why not? It isn't like Ash or how Lucha could have earned it. But, it's whatever. It is what it is. So then, of course, we get Greninja versus Klotzer. And, of course, Greninja wins. And, of course, because of Scizor and Klotzer, we can definitely say that Greninja only relies on the Ash Greninja form for really tough battles that itself cannot beat, but it seems to be pretty strong in its base form. So then, of course, we get Greninja versus Sceptile. So, of course, we get Ash looking down when the transformation fails. Sawyer takes advantage. And then, of course, we get this Leaf Storm, Leaf Blade combination where Greninja dies, basically, or gets knocked out. So then, of course, we apparently get Sawyer joining the team for at least the next episode, but maybe multiple ones. I guess they really want Sawyer to see Ash Greninja without its water veil, which is probably why we're getting that. Or I'm thinking what's actually is the case is since Sawyer doesn't really need to go anywhere, that he has no problem tagging along with Ash and company. Who knows? Maybe Sawyer will actually be a temporary main character until the league. Maybe we'll get Sawyer in the Team Flare climax going on. Maybe we'll have an episode revolved around Sawyer finding a Septilite. And then, of course, there's a whole arc devoted to Sawyer getting Sceptile to Mega Evolve. So maybe Sawyer's like now on the team forever. Maybe he'll see Ash's Gudra or whatever. It's like hard to say, and we probably won't know until we get previews. Or well, I'm assuming if Sawyer was going to leave, definitely episodes, but of course, if not previews of other episodes, because unfortunately Sawyer is voiced by Aiku Otani, which voices Ash's Pikachu, so we're not going to know in the VA list unless specifically it says Sawyer or not. So it'll be up. It's kind of up in the air whether or not Sawyer is going to be on the cast or not. Whether it's going to be up until Ash Greninja and then Sawyer needs to train somewhere special, or they have a rematch after a couple more episodes, but we'll just have to wait and see and stuff or whatever. So, let's jump into my analysis of the battle and why I dislike this particular episode as the way it turned out. Now, the following statements I want to make perfectly clear. They are pure opinions based on my interpretation, my perspective of what I saw in the episode. So, could that mean I'm wrong? Yes. But please do not assume that I'm treating these facts, these observations, as facts. Because a lot of people seem to think that when you say something in the forums or whatever, you're like saying it as fact. The thing you need to know about me is I'm not that clever. I can try to be that clever, but I basically just say what is at the top of my head in regards to speculation or my observations or what I feel the series is turning out. I'm not someone who adds a special connotation in regards to what I'm saying, where I'm saying, this is completely fact. You will bow down and worship me. That's not me. I don't do that. I know there are a lot of people or whatever, but the thing you need to know is, even if my opinions come out as fact or whatever, and I say something that seems as fact, but you're not really sure or whatever, I'm not saying it as a fact. I'm just saying it as a statement of my opinion of what I perceive. Obviously, no one's going to know specifically what the writers were going for unless they specifically say. So if I say Ash Greninja wasn't trying to transform, and I say that the Battle Pulse proves that it wasn't trying to transform, and it didn't want to transform, that is just an opinion based on my perception of what happened. So, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So, Ash was out of character during this episode. I'm not going to go in depth, but the way that Ash treated this battle and his reactions was very unlike Ash, as a result of causing the big surprising thing to happen. But I'm not going to blame anyone specifically for that event not happening, whether it be Ash himself or Greninja or whatever. But I'm definitely going to blame the writers for this, because they're just like shoving this out of nowhere and they didn't exactly make it clear what was going on. So I definitely blame that. So, to be fair to Ash's character, to give him some leeway here, I realized that Ash Greninja is something that Ash has never had before, but I just don't know how much that excuses his reactions. I don't like the thought that Ash gets this brand new shiny toy, basically, in regards to Pokemon, as hard as it would be to call Pokemon toys. But, it's like he gets the shiny new toy and it doesn't work properly, and he gets all shocked and surprised and flabbergasted, and I'm not sure how much it justifies that. But I do admit that there is some leeway here because he's never had anything like Ash Greninja. So maybe some of his reactions or the thoughts of his reactions are justifiable, but I definitely don't think they're fully justifiable. But that's just my opinion. So, out of character moments, and remember, this is just my opinion from the perspective that I feel are strange for Ash to have to deal with in regards to this particular episode. So, it all started with Greninja versus Klotzer. That was when things started getting very strange and weird. That makes it seem like, of course, that Ash shouldn't have done whatever it was, but we'll go into it. Why was Ash's battle pulse strange during this fight versus Greninja versus Klotzer? Am I really to believe that Sawyer was simply, or not Sawyer, of course I'd say Sawyer. Of course I would say Sawyer when I meant Ash. Am I to believe that Ash was simply stressed out during that battle? Yes, Ash had previously steamrolled Sawyer, and Sawyer in this battle was somehow doing a lot better, but I just take issue that after Ash told Greninja to dodge Klotzer's Dragon Pulse, that somehow Ash was stressed out during this fight, believing that he was, going to lose? Or what, Ash suddenly a trainer that you've previously one-shotted in your previous battles is actually holding his own against you, even knocking out two of your Pokemon with two different Pokemon, and just with one Pokemon. It was Klotzer that both knocked out Noivern and Hawlucha. I got a little confused there or whatever. Are you telling me that that's why you're all shocked and surprised or whatever? That you're all stressed out as a result of that? Are you telling me that you've never encountered this problem? Are you sure, Ash? To make matters even worse in regards to the battle pulse being strange and out of sync or whatever, and being all jumpy and all wild and crazy on the monitor, my problem is Greninja one-shotted Klotzer. After it dodged, Ash basically told Greninja to use Cut. Then there was an Ice Beam. Greninja cut through that Ice Beam, took no damage basically, sliced, cut Klotzer, and then Klotzer knocked out. And Ash still never recovered from that. He was still stressed out. He wasn't even relieved. He was like, woo! Alright, well, I don't think I'm going to lose now, but it's like he was always stressed out the whole entire time. And I just don't understand why that is the case, And it's like, Ash can't even be grateful that Greninja actually knocked out Klotzer. It's like, why is Ash stressing out over a Klotzer knocking out two of his Pokemon? I mean, and I say here, Ash has had plenty of 3v versus 3s where this didn't go out very well in regards to that, but Ash never really freaked out. I mean, he may have, maybe had some stressed out issues, but not to the extent that we see in this battle, that Ash isn't at least relieved that Greninja took out Klotzer in one hit. It's like, what did you expect, Ash to always beat Sawyer every single time, one-shotting him? Really, Ash? And it feels like very out of character. And I say here, kind of as a serious joke here, But I say if Ash is going to be that stressed out, or he encounters an obstacle that he's faced before, and he's going to be so stressed out that he cannot sync with Greninja to activate this Ash Greninja form, then I think he just needs to stop battling and stop being a Pokemon Master, because I feel like it was ridiculous, you know? The thing is, if Ash had somehow did this multiple times, like he actually forced the transformation, and I don't want to get into this because this is where we get into a whole bunch of problems in regards to all of this and makes it even more difficult to believe. But if somehow Ash was forcing Greninja to try to transform in this particular episode, and I'm just like, well, then why are you as surprised and shocked or whatever? It's. I mean, if you had done this previously and you forced Greninja to transform, then I can understand when this episode comes out, you somehow are stressed, even though I'll never believe that will make any sense. And then, of course, you're out of sync and you can't transform. And then when the transformation fails, and I can understand you being shocked and surprised that it's not happening. But when the other times have been basically just in the heat of the moment or heat of the battle, and then it just fails here, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, I understand that Ash really wasn't expecting it to fail, and because it did fail, Ash was like, what's going on, or whatever. But, I don't understand why he was so stressed out to cause them to not even sync up and transform. And I say here, I mean, was Ash this stressed out against Ramos? I mean, Weeping Bell just obliterated all his Pokemon, and even Froggy Deer didn't even manage to one-shot Weeping Bell. It took like a couple of hits to knock out Weeping Bell, and then it was against Go-Go, and I feel like Ramos was obviously a tougher opponent at that time than Sawyer was in here. I mean, it made sense for Claude to take out Noivern, and as much as I disagree with it, of course Hawlucha would lose to a single Ice Beam attack, even though Hawlucha is going to be in the Ice type gym in the next episode. And of course, if Ash does send out Hawlucha before Wolfric sends out Abomasnow, it's not really going to make any much sense in regards to that. And the thing is, and I say here, after Hawlucha lost, Ash took it in stride. He wasn't really upset. He was only stressed out when he told Greninja to dodge Clotzer's Dragon Pulse. And I'm like, why? I mean, I don't understand why. I personally take this as he doesn't trust his Pokemon, or he doesn't trust himself to beat Sawyer. And I'm like, I mean, and I feel like this will always be something that's out of character when Ash seemingly, from my perspective of watching the battle, that he somehow doesn't trust his Pokemon or himself because he's in a tough bind. I'll always be a little stranger or whatever. And I say here, questioning his Pokemon's strength and skill and his own skill, questioning them, that is in character, because Ash has always been that. He's always wondering if he's going to win or whatever, but then he's like, no, I will win. Or if I don't win, I will always do my best. Now that's in character. But I don't like when it seems like Ash is overthinking and overcomplicating things and is like, oh no, I feel like I'm going to lose. I mean, why do you feel like you're going to lose? I mean, the battle isn't over yet. It's not even close to being over yet. You just sent out Greninja against Claude, and it dodged Dragon Pulse. And you're stressing out? I mean, maybe it's stressing out over the fact that Claude has Mega Launcher, and maybe Ash thought Greninja was going to be one-hit KO'd from that Dragon Pulse, but even so, Ash never calmed down. Granted, the battle against Sceptile, I can understand why he didn't completely calm down or be less stressed out based on what happened during that battle, but, it's weird that he's not putting more faith in himself and his characters and coming to the conclusion that his opponent is just someone who is having a better luck at defeating Ash's Pokemon. And I say here, and I really would prefer not to go deep into this or whatever, but I guess I'm going to have to, just to clarify my point. And I feel like this is very similar to 5th gen in regards to Elisa, the electric gym leader of 5th generation. And that was my least favorite gym battle of the entire series. I disliked Roxy, but I feel like Elisa or whatever was purely so out of character for Ash, and the way that they presented it, that it was just not likable outside of Palpitoad beating Zebstrika. So I just want to quickly go over into this mess or whatever, and I just want to make this note before I get into why I dislike that gym battle. I know this isn't the time and place, but it is relevant to the Ash versus Sawyer. And the reason for that mess apparently was because they wanted a comic relief gym battle. They wanted a funny gym battle or whatever. And I'm just sitting here and like, that's not funny. That's just pure annoying. It's like you're trying to be funny, but maybe for the kids it's funny. Maybe they found it hilarious that Ash was being completely stupid in that episode, which I really hate so much, that they threw Ash's character under the bus just to make a funny gym battle. You can make it funny, but you don't have to treat it like that, And here's what I mean. Ash was thinking of a way to beat Elisa. Now that, of course, makes sense. Ash is going to sometimes think about how he's going to beat Clement or some other trainer or whatever. And that's within Ash's character half of the time, and other times he just jumps into the battle and be like, let's do this, I'm not going to overcomplicate things, I'm just going to go straight into the battle and do it. We kind of got that with Ash versus Korrina, when Ash battled Tierno, and Tierno did the whole dancing move where Squirtle touched Froakie. Ash was like, wow, that would be a great strategy to use against Korrina. So, of course, we got Korrina, where in the beginning Ash was trying to do dance moves, but of course it wasn't working out. And then Ash was like, I don't need no over-exaggerant strategy or tactic here. I should just battle the way that I should battle, and that's what happened. But, of course, the problem in this particular episode is the writer at that particular time may have created other gym battles that were better, but in this particular battle, it seemed like it was the writers and the executive producers that, when Ash blatantly says he would rather use his other Pokemon to give them experience over Pikachu, and Pikachu throws a temper tantrum, Ash is going to suck as a trainer. And I hate that. Granted, again, all of this is my opinion or whatever from my perspective of what I saw, but it was basically saying that Ash is not allowed to use his other Pokemon, and of course he loses all of that. And then we move on to Ash relying solely on Palpitoad. Are you kidding me? Ash only basically took Palpitoad and Pikachu in the battle. I mean, that's not entirely confirmed, but given that he had to go to the Pokemon Center to retrieve Snivy, which should have always been on his team regardless, especially since we're dealing with a electric gym leader, I feel like he only brought in Palpitoad and as well as Pikachu. And I'm like, are you serious? And this comes after, of course, Ash is going to strategize and use and think about what he's going to use, especially after Elisa murdered the crap out of Bianca in the episode beforehand. Okay, Zebstrika was a very powerful Pokemon. Palpitoad makes sense to use against Zebstrika, since if Zebstrika had a fire-type move like Flame Charge, as well as electric-type moves, Palpitoad would be beneficial to be that. But unfortunately, to think that Palpitoad was enough to sweep the entirety of Elisa's gym, and Ash is like, oh no, Palpitoad lost. Oh, what am I going to do now? It was like completely ridiculous and completely stupid, especially given that Bianca was completely massacred and her Pokemon were massacred by Zebstrika. You would think that if Zebstrika is Elisa's first Pokemon, that her other Pokemon would just be as strong or be enough to encounter things. So I thought that was ridiculous. And then, of course, to make things worse, is that Ash is like sitting down thinking of who he was going to use, and he's like, of course, your Emolga used Attract. I have an Attract user as well. Excuse me while I go excuse myself to the Pokemon Center and grab the Pokemon that I should have already had on my team at this particular point and go get it. And then he comes back, uses Snivy, and then, of course, Emolga versus Snivy happened. Now, I'm not going to criticize Emolga versus Snivy happening because I feel like that makes sense. Ash didn't think that Elisa's Emolga was a female Emolga. You know, given the fact that Iris's Emolga is female, it's kind of strange that there was yet another female Emolga. So I can understand that Ash was not thinking that her Emolga was a girl, but I have a problem with the whole Snivy's a girl? Oh, of course Attract only works for opposite gendered Pokemon. What? I mean, it couldn't be as simple as, oh, your Emolga is a female. Oh, I thought it was, oh, okay, I misunderstood. You know, okay. I forgot that your Emolga was somehow a female or whatever. You know, it's... And then, of course, after Snivy loses, Ash sits down and thinks, oh, what am I going to do? And then Ash should have been disqualified. As much as I like Ash or whatever, I feel like the referee should have just disqualified. But no, we had Pikachu, who had been a brat throughout the whole entire episode, yelling at Pikachu, getting upset and shocking the crap out of Ash before he's like, oh, of course, you're right, Pikachu. I'm going to use Pikachu. And basically, despite the fact that he decided not to do it or whatever. Anyway, the point is, I'm just annoyed that in a convoluted way, Ash used the same Pokemon he used in the Dawn Battle Tournament prior hand. Because he used Palpitoad, Snivy, Pikachu in that particular Dawn Battle Tournament in, I believe, Nimbasa Town. And of course, I'm like, really? You are telling me that you were always going to pick that team, but you couldn't have already had it? You know, I didn't like Ash jumping around all over the place or whatever, being like, oh no, what's going on? And that episode kind of illustrates my point. Ash didn't have any faith or trust in his Pokemon during that particular episode. He put too much trust and faith in Palpitoad, and then while he was thinking of a way to counter Elisa's Pokemon, because apparently Ash only thought she had Zebstrika for whatever stupid reason, you know, and it's kind of like now, you know, it's like exactly right now, Ash is being very stressed out just because Clawitzer took out 2 Pokemon. And again, I've already said, we've had plenty of 3-on-3s where there has been a fall Pokemon, like against Ramos, and again, it was Halucha, but Ash didn't feel like he was stressed out. It was usually the final battle that maybe Ash was stressed out, but Ash usually accepted it. Oh my, you're a powerful Pokemon trainer. But apparently, no, that's not the case. And of course, I feel like Ash was doing it in a more mature, subtle way. See, in Best Wishes, we can definitely say that Ash was a lot more immature because they reset Ash's character just to make it so it's all fresh and new or whatever. And that's what we got. And of course, his personality took quite a few steps back to the original series, only slightly more mature and more experienced, because that was the case. But of course, Ash was making these newbie mistakes or whatever, and of course that ultimately led to Ash being a very immature child for the most part in the episode. So I feel like in this particular instance, it's a more mature way to not trust or put your faith in Pokemon, not to like be like, oh no, how am I going to beat this trainer? How am I going to beat this Pokemon sitting down? Oh, let me go to the Pokemon Center and get a Pokemon here. No, in this particular instance, it was just Ash really stressed out and freaking out at the possibility that he was going to lose. Never mind that there's no conclusion that could have been made that he was going to lose. I mean, sure, you only had Greninja, but Greninja is one of your most powerful Pokemon, Ash, in your Kalos team. I can't think of any Pokemon. Maybe Goodra could be considered stronger than base form Greninja. Maybe if we're maybe thinking of it, the peak of Goodra should theoretically be slightly stronger than base form Greninja. But seriously, you have Ash Greninja, which is like the most powerful Pokemon that you could possibly ever possess, that did so great against Diantha. You could maybe at least wait until you're actually struggling with base form Greninja before stressing out. But, it's whatever. So I'm just saying, it just doesn't really make any sense, and it's just very strange completely. And then, of course, okay, so we had Ash's Battle Pulse that was acting all weird and everything, and then when Ash tried to activate the Ash Greninja transformation, his pulse was very consistent. It was one of the few times within the episode that it was consistent, and we saw this when Ash realized that the transformation happened. When we next see the Battle Pulse of Ash, we can actually see it having that consistent form that it usually has. The only difference is, I believe, the peaks of the waveform or whatever were shorter, like they were like bigger in versus Diantha, and of course the rapid move, or the rate of those peaks was a little bit faster, but it was relatively consistent. It was like ready to sync up. But of course the problem is Greninja had this very non-moving battle pulse or whatever, and I'm like, why didn't Greninja's battle pulse change at all during the battle? I mean, it felt like Ash was more excited about battling or being more stressed out, but Greninja was like, oh, I'm just going to do this and do this or whatever. Oh no, I'm not doing so well, but I'm not really getting into the battle. I mean, I don't know if Sceptile, when it did attacks against Greninja, Greninja didn't feel like it was a threat, or whatever, that Sceptile wasn't a threat, and that it could do it, and that it basically underestimated Sceptile strength or whatever, and maybe that ultimately costed Greninja at the end for the deadly combo of Leaf Blade and Leaf Storm, or Leaf Storm and Leaf Blade, and that was enough to knock out Greninja. But I still think it's weird that Greninja's pulse did not change at all during the episode, despite all of the things that happened. When the transformation failed, it was like, why couldn't Ash shrug it off? Like, what's going on? Greninja, use Aerialaze. Greninja, use Cut. And did Ash really have to stop paying attention to the battle, stop paying attention to everything, and look down at his hands, or maybe his wrist, or whatever, for basically 10 seconds before Sawyer called out Leaf Blade, or Leaf Storm, sorry. He called out Leaf Storm, and during that 10 minutes where Ash was like wondering what was going on, it resulted in Greninja looking back and being like, wait, what's going on? And then, of course, we got that Leaf Storm. Leaf Storm goes up, and then as Greninja's falling down, we get a powerful Leaf Blade attack that knocks out Greninja. How was that even remotely... How did that even remotely make any sense? Ash couldn't wait until... Why was Ash so incapacitated at that moment that he couldn't pay attention to the battle anymore? I don't know. I mean, I see some of this other stuff, but it's pretty much just repeating the same. But then I want to go back to this, and I would have definitely preferred Ash continue the battle, Greninja getting a couple hits, because if you saw the thing, Greninja was going so fast. It was going faster in the battle than anything else it was otherwise doing. And then, of course, what do we get? Greninja, like, disappearing at particular points and appearing, and Sceptile was like, whoa, what's going on, or whatever. And, of course, it was only when Greninja was not focused that Sawyer capitalized it and took advantage. But based on that speed, I'm almost positive Greninja could have gotten in an aerial ace or a cut and maybe followed it up with the opposite of attack or at least a water shuriken or something, and Sceptile could have taken some damage. And the thing is, then of course, because Ash is still trying to figure out why Ash Greninja didn't happen, Sceptile of course gets in that Leaf Storm. Ash is like, what? Oh no, a Greninja water shuriken or whatever. And then as Greninja's falling, it could have been the same thing. The problem is, why did Ash have to look at his hands? Why did Greninja have to look back at Ash, resulting in Sawyer commanding Leaf Storm? That's my only problem with this episode. I probably would have been more fine with this episode if Ash was a little confused as to why the transformation didn't happen, and Ash was a little bit out of focus in regards to the battle and lost in that fashion. I'd be much happier with that as a result, rather than Ash looking down at his hands and being like, what's going on? What's going on? Leaf Storm! What? No! Greninja! I mean, really? We've had this multiple times. We had this in 5th generation, where Iris's Dragonite freaked out and was going on a rampage just because Crocodile used Dragon Claw on it, and Ash still battled despite the fact that Dragonite was basically trying to destroy everything in its path. And then we also got this in this generation with Ash against Sawyer in the first proper battle that they had, Hawlucha versus Slurpuff. Sawyer was writing down notes on Hawlucha doing something, and then Ash capitalized on it that you're not supposed to do that during a battle or whatever, and then just to have that happening to Ash just because the transformation fails, I feel like there should have been more build up to this, more like, maybe in the previous episode have another episode where Ash and Ash Greninja's form was like intermittent, like it would appear and it would unfocus and then it would appear maybe Ash passed out or whatever, and then we didn't get anything here because Ash is like, what's going on or whatever, and then we could have gotten into it. It's just like, I feel like this whole Ash Greninja plot is just completely rushed, especially when you consider the next following episodes. We can pretty much guarantee that Ash is going to lose to Wolfric next Thursday. This upcoming Thursday, anyway. Not next Thursday, not the Thursday after this Thursday, but like the 18th or the 19th or whatever it is. The 19th. This 19th. May 19th is Ash is going to lose to Wolfric. Then, of course, we get an episode where Ash is going on his own in some wilderness forest or whatever, where there's this blizzard storm of some sort, and he cuddles with these wild, unevolved Pokemon, and then, of course, somehow he's okay, and then he works with Greninja a little bit better in the next following episode. It's like, are you really saying that Ash really was the whole problem during this? It's just very, very strange, and I don't like it at all. So, and the sad thing is, of course, Ash Greninja actually shows up in its water veiled form against Sawyer, and I'm like, what? It didn't happen in this episode, then we're going straight into the next episode with Greninja becoming Ash Greninja in that form. It's like, where are you going with this, writers, producers? I feel like they're not properly, I feel like they're rushing it. I think they're like, wait, how do we explain this Ash Greninja form? We don't want to make it too powerful at this particular moment. It's going to be a powerful transformation, but we got to explain it somehow. But we already have all these episodes planned or whatever, so let's go ahead and just like rush the line. Ash will lose to Sawyer at one particular point. He'll have problems with Wolfric, lose. He'll go into the building forest and learn something about himself, and then of course he'll master the form. Woo! It's like, whoa. Calm down, slow down. We need proper explanation for this transformation. You know, it's your fault for waiting this long to explain the Ash Greninja and get to the point where Ash Greninja would be without its water veil. But holy crap, slow down. You know, so basically, I would if Greninja would have just ultimately lost to Sceptile the way that I wanted, this would have been a very decent episode. I probably would have had some problems with it. Definitely not like the battle with Diantha or whatever. This was a completely different battle that I didn't really care for one way or the other. Great that Noivern learned Dragon Claw or has Dragon Claw. That's a nice attack. Not necessarily what I would have had. I would prefer to Outrage, but you know, whatever. Maybe the next Dragon Pokemon Ash will have Outrage. But basically, this was just a very meh episode. Is basically whatever it was. So I don't know. The point is, this is just weird. So let me quickly move on before I end this particular video. Sorry, I apologize if I've been talking too much, trying to say why I'm frustrated and confused with this episode. But let's go ahead and move on to the next episode. So basically, in the preview, the only important things we got outside of Wolfric being shown is, of course, we see Talonflame versus Avalugg, Abomasnow versus Hawlucha, and Ash Greninja versus Avalugg. Now, we do know that Hawlucha is going to be used against Avalugg at some particular point. The problem is what is going to happen in this particular episode. And I feel like I know what's going to happen in this particular episode in regards to this. Basically, I feel like Wolfric is going to send out Avalugg first. And what we're potentially going to get is Talonflame versus Avalugg. Avalugg is obviously going to win because why not? Then it's going to be against Hawlucha. Hawlucha is going to be against Avalugg. Not do too well, but Ash will recall Avalugg. And then he'll send out Greninja. Greninja will struggle against Avalugg and then turn into Ash Greninja and then beat Avalugg. And then either at this particular point, Ash Greninja is going to straight up lose against Abomasnow or whatever the case is going to be, or even potentially Ash is going to recall Greninja or whatever, and then it's going to be Abomasnow versus Hawlucha or Ash Greninja. Abomasnow is going to come out on top, and then of course it's going to be the opposite Pokemon in the final batch. It's going to be Abomasnow versus Hawlucha or Greninja, and of course Ash is going to lose. And then of course we're going to get everything else. What I could think could happen is that maybe Greninja does transform into Ash Greninja, Ash recalls it or whatever, the transformation is broken as a result of that, Ash sends out Hawlucha against Abomasnow, Hawlucha loses horribly, then of course he sends out Greninja, but for whatever reason Greninja cannot turn into Ash Greninja again and Ash is freaked out and that's why he loses. It's possible that could happen. I don't know if Wolfric is going to send out a third Pokemon or not, but if he does, I'm not expecting that Pokemon to do very much, and we'll probably have to wait until the following episode. So, of course, after that, we get the Winding Woods episode where Ash goes on his own to figure out what's wrong with him, apparently, or whatever the case is going to be. And then, of course, we're going to get the conclusion for the Wolfric gym battle where Ash is going to get his badge. And then, of course, we're going to get Carbink, Goodra, and Dedenne episode after that. So that's pretty much it. I'm pretty sure the next video is probably going to be my review of the Wolfric gym battle, but I'm not entirely sure. I could do a Sun and Moon since we have a little bit more information in regards to Sun and Moon, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a full video on that. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'm Dustin Benzel, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.